Hello guys and girls, and welcome back to another episode of Seb Talks Sports. That intro music and podcast theme was created by All-Pro New York Giants running back, now music creator and friend of the show, David Wilson. Go and check him out on all of his social media platforms at 4StillRunning on Twitter and Instagram, and his music under David E. Wilson across all good music streaming services. He's free for business, so drop him a message if you want some beats for your podcast, advert, commercial, absolutely anything you need. Before I get into this episode, I just want to say that if you're not already following Seb Talk Sports across all platforms, then please do. You can find me on Facebook, Seb Talk Sports, YouTube, Seb Talk Sports, Twitter at Seb Talk Sports, and Instagram, where I'm primarily active. Again, it's at Seb Talks Sports. Today, I've got another great guest, a lifelong Washington fan who turned his passion into a career by making it as a professional NFL scout for the New York Jets, working under Hall of Famer Bill Parcells and 8-time Super Bowl champion Bill Belichick. It's the inspirational figure that is Daniel Kelly. Enjoy. My guest today is a man who went from nothing more than a passionate fan of the NFL to a 4-year professional scout for the New York Jets, working for Hall of Famer Bill Parcells and 8-time Super Bowl champion Bill Belichick. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome Daniel Kelly to Seb Talk Sports. Daniel, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you, Seb. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm excited. Let's get going. Let's put the ball in the tee, huh?
Let's do it. I want to start here. So I know that you're a lifelong fan of the Washington franchise, and obviously you've got the gear on, which looks awesome.
Thank you.
And they've, of course, been in the news recently regarding their name change. But I want to know, how did your love for the Washington team and the NFL begin in general, and what are your earliest memories of football?
Absolutely. Well, hello to our listeners too in the UK. It's truly an honor and a privilege to be on your country. I'm coming live from Key West, Florida, over here about 90 miles north of Cuba. But to answer your question, I mean, my earliest memories really start when I was 8 years old. My parents grew up in Minnesota in the States, and my parents were passionate Vikings fans, and they had a Vikings playoff game going on the little RCA television in the corner of the living room, and it was love at first sight, but not for the Minnesota Vikings, but for the Washington Redskins. And hence the jersey and the hat I was kind of telling you offline for a minute. I just got this jersey today in the mail. It's a Jay Schrader, my favorite Redskins quarterback of all time back in the mid 80s. But yeah, it was I worked just for your show. But it was an incredible experience. I mean, it was love at first sight, really, Seb, and our listeners. It was like how a person describes falling in love with another person. It was just like a magnet to a refrigerator. Everything about the Washington Redskins vibed and resonated with who I was as a little boy. The colors, the emblem, the stadium, the fans, the electricity. I mean, the fans used to shake at RFK Stadium where the Redskins played. You know, they would chant, "We want Dallas, we want Dallas." If you Google it or go on a search engine, you'll see like the old stands and the fans in the stands. And it was electric. The atmosphere was absolutely positively electric. And of course, it was John Riggins, my favorite player of all time, was the running back. They had Joe Theismann. They had Joe Gibbs, the coach of the Redskins. The Hogs, the big offensive lineman up front. I mean, it was just, I was in love. That's the only way to describe it. And so that's where it really kind of took off. And then, of course, 2 weeks later, the Washington Redskins at the time win Super Bowl 17 in an epic scene. It comes down to 4th and 1. The Redskins' second-year coach, Joe Gibbs, is facing off against Don Shula, the legendary Don Shula. It was really a story of second-year coaches versus a legend at that point. It was like David versus Goliath, right? And most coaches would have chosen to punt, but not Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs turns to recently, God rest his soul, Joe Bugel, the offensive line coach at the time, a legendary offensive line coach in the States for the Redskins and coached a few other teams. And Joe Gibbs turns to his offensive line coach, Buggs, and says, it's 4th and 1, right, against Don Shula. Picture this. And Joe Gibbs says, well, what do you think about our chances, on 4th down? And Buggs turns to Coach Gibbs and says, I like our chances against any safety matchup against John Riggins in the league, right? So they hand the ball off to Riggins. The play call is 70 chip. And, the rest is history. John Riggins has a look on his face of raw and pure determination, a look much like how I've run my life. It's a look that literally could be etched on Mount Rushmore in the States into the rocks, into the mountains. It was a look of raw and pure determination. He would not be denied. He took off for 43 yards, I believe it was, for Super Bowl glory. And the Redskins, of course, win Super Bowl 17. I was hooked. And from that point forward, I mean, how much of a fanatic was I as a little kid? Well, the next year, the Redskins played in Super Bowl 18 against the Oakland Raiders and lost against the Raiders. I still have nightmares about Marcus Allen reversing field and running for a touchdown. And they lost. And how hard did I take the game at 9 years old? I threw up and missed 3 days of school. Oh, and so it was crazy, Zeb. I mean, I ate, breathed, and slept Redskins football. When I wasn't talking Redskins, I was thinking Redskins. When I wasn't thinking Redskins, I was dreaming Redskins. I called my grandmother up on the phone every night, and talked Redskins. It got to a point, I got her so into the Redskins and so in the football. She actually, the first thing she started going for in the morning was the sports section in the newspaper. And it was wild that, and then it comes when I'm 13 years old, and my parents, for Christmas that year, got me a ticket to my first ever Redskins game. I was going to go to the Washington Redskins, Minnesota Vikings, the day after Christmas, December 26, 1987. They gave me that ticket Christmas morning. I'm on cloud nine, and I start having this thought, Seb. I'm like, I should be, maybe sometimes this is how it works with me. Ideas will just start coming to my mind. And this is a theme that has replayed many times in my life, where some of my greatest moments have come where ideas just come out of nowhere. And these ideas come in my mind and say, you should start really calling all the hotels in Minneapolis and St. Paul and Minnesota and States and, try to see which hotel are the Washington Redskins staying at, the team, right? Mm. So, of course, my parents and grandparents are out in the living room. It's kind of snowing in Minnesota, and they're on the living room playing a card game, fire's going to the fireplace, everything, right? Christmas trees on. And so I get a big yellow, big phone book, and I start calling all the hotels. Well, I called probably about 20 of them. Well, about the next one I called was, and this woman answered the phone. She goes, good evening, Bloomington Marriott. How may I direct your call? And I said, Dexter Manley's room, please. Now, for those of you who don't know, right, I'm 13 years old, right? Now, for those of you who don't know, our listeners, Dexter Manley was one of the most revered pass rushers of the day. It was like calling a hotel or a motel and asking to speak to Ray Lewis, or calling to speak to Lawrence Taylor or Deion Sanders or something. I mean, the magnitude of his stardom was epic back in the mid 80s. He was always in the Pro Bowl. He was one of the leading sack artists in the NFL. So I mean, calling Dexter Manley and trying to get him on the phone is no small task. So I say, Dexter Manley's room, please, and all of a sudden the phone starts to ring. My heart goes in my throat at 13 years old. Now picture this: for anybody who loves football, imagine calling one of your heroes on the phone as a little boy. And that's what it was. And a man answers the phone. He says, hello. And I said, Dexter? And he goes, speaking. Who's this? I said, I'm Dan Kelly, one of your biggest fans. He goes, oh, hi. And he was in the mood to talk, which was amazing, right? He starts talking to me, and he starts telling me, at first I started telling him how I had his big poster, his Sports Illustrated poster hanging on my wall in my bedroom. And he starts telling me what it's like to sack the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, which is a really cool story. And I loved hearing about that, how he just rocked Danny White's world. and then he says, hey, tell you what, he goes, how would you feel, Dan, about coming out to the team hotel tomorrow morning and meeting me, and I'll introduce you all the guys and players on the team and the coaches and stuff. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, really. I'm like, I got off the phone. I ran out. My parents are sitting there. My dad had about a few beers by this point, right? The Christmas night, everyone's feeling good and jolly, right? And I ran out of the living room, and I was like, Dexter Manley invited me to Team Hotel. Dexter Manley. And my parents were like, what? Who? What? And I was like, yeah, he did. And so the next morning, my parents, we went to the game that day. My parents, I said, are fanatical Vikings fans. My mom's got all this Vikings gear on. I'm like, Mom, why are you wearing this to the Redskins hotel? Right? I have war paint on my face. I got a hat on like this. I'm wearing my Joe Gibbs coaching jacket. I'm Redskin head to toe, and we walk in the hotel, and sure enough, there's Dexter Manley, the star defensive player for the Washington Redskins, perhaps the greatest defensive player in Redskins team history, waiting for me, right? Waiting for me in the hotel lobby, right? And check this out. I mean, I just to prove it, so people don't think that the story, I'm not just a storyteller, around a campfire with marshmallows, right? It's now check this out. Here's my book, right? My book, Whatever It Takes, the true story of a fan making the NFL. It's available in 11 different countries, right? So inside the book, I put pictures. If you can see that,
Hey.
There I am at 13 years old with Dexter Manley in the hotel, right? And he's smiling. Look at that smile on Dexter's face, right? So he's smiling, and we're having a great time. He's autographing stuff, taking pictures. Me and my mom's sitting there with the camera, snapping pictures. And he goes, well, come on back. And so he takes me back to the team conference room, and one by one, my Field of Dreams, the guys came out, all the star players in the Redskins, signed my poster, took pictures with me. I mean, it was incredible, Zeb. I mean, like, look at this. I mean, like I have other pictures in here just to show, like this jersey I'm wearing today, this Jay Schroeder jersey, right? So here I am on that day, 13 years old, with Pro Bowl quarterback Jay Schroeder of the Washington Redskins.
Nice.
There I am, right? And so I mean, it was incredible. Having a chance, there I am here with Super Bowl 22 MVP Doug Williams. He's signing some stuff for me right there, right? So there I am. And so, I mean, it's incredible. And so it's like surreal. We go to the game, Redskins win. Of course, 3 weeks later, January 31st, 1988, Redskins win against the Denver Broncos 42-10. Doug Williams lit up the skies. Not that I remember. It was like yesterday. Never mind. But anyways, so it was an incredible experience. So I got more and more submersed into the Redskins culture. I wrote letters to Coach Joe Gibbs when I'm a kid, right? Teenager. He started writing me back, right? And I'm not talking about form letters. I'm talking about personal letters to me from the head coach of the Washington Redskins when I was a teenager. It was surreal, right? Every kid in school knew me as Dan the Redskins man. This one kid bet me $100, U.S. money, right, that I could not wear a different Redskins hat and shirt every day for a month to school. I won that $100. That's okay. Now, I didn't have a girlfriend because I was looked at as being a nerd, right? I was like, oh, that guy, man, he's just crazy, right? And so, but my room was a Redskins shrine. I lived, ate, and breathed Redskins football. And so that's all I wanted to ever do was be on the Washington Redskins.
That's amazing. Okay, I want to go from your team to mine. So obviously I'm a Jags fan, and the Jacksonville franchise is something we both have in common because ahead of the 95 draft, you took part in a mock draft run by the Vikings. You went to the Vikings facility and represented my Jags, selecting eventual 3-time first-team All-Pro and 5-time Pro Bowler, and hopefully future Hall of Famer Tony Boselli, who the Jags did in fact take with the second overall pick, and what a decision it proved to be. So you were definitely vindicated there, to say the least, by choosing Mr. Boselli. So I'd love to know what your scouting report on Tony Boselli was and what you saw in him coming out of college that justified his second overall selection.
I thought it was a franchise-looking tackle from what I recall at the time. I mean, I thought he was everything you wanted. A guy, big body, can move well, had good technique, could slide his feet out, could punch, jab, keep the defender in front of him, seal off the edge. He had enough speed back to the inside to recover. He just had that look to him that he was going to be a 10, 15-year player in the NFL, barring some major catastrophic injury. So I thought it'd be perfect for an expansion team coming to the league like Jacksonville, your team was at the beginning. I thought, if there's a player outside of a quarterback that you can build a team around, it's generally left tackle, because that's the cornerstone of your operation, cornerstone of your offensive line. Blind side for most if you got a right-handed quarterback. So I thought he would be the guy.
Absolutely. And thank God that we actually did take him, because he's one of the best players in our franchise history. Okay, so I'm going to go back to you. So use the story of New York Jets legend Wayne Chrebet as an inspiration to you with regards to your work ethic and efforts. So much so that you spent a total of $3,600 printing and sending your self-published scouting report to every single NFL team's GM, head coach, and director of player personnel, which is just amazing. What an amazing nugget of information. So the first to get back to you was Bruce Letterman, who was head of college scouting for the Saints, but you eventually didn't end up receiving an offer from New Orleans, unfortunately. But throughout your journey to eventually becoming an NFL scout, which we'll get to, how did you deal with and manage processing the inevitability of rejection, and who installed the resilience in you to keep going?
That's a great question. It was something where I think that I had the innate ability, I think, given to me by God to overcome rejection. Rejection is something I faced a lot of growing up. In school, I kind of joked about not having a girlfriend, and having just a lot of kids kind of teased me a lot of times. I was kind of bullied in school a lot. Was kind of that kid that was kind of a lone I didn't have many friends. I had about 2 or 3 close friends. And, so I dealt with a lot of rejection. I dealt with a lot of that kind of stuff. And, I just had this incredible God-given ability to push through everything, I think. So, and I'm sorry, what was the other part of your question?
Who installed that resilience in you to keep going?
God. That's what I would say. Yeah, I would say so, because I can't really point to anything in particular. I think it was just the circumstances I was put through, I think really kind of branded that inside of me.
Absolutely. And obviously all that hard work did pay off, of course, because after being rejected by the Saints, you received interest from Scott Pioli, director of pro personnel for the Jets. And the very next day you called in sick to work and flew out to the Jets facility, meeting with...
Sick to work, Sam, sick.
Meeting with everyone in management, from Pioli to Bill Parcells and the one and only Bill Belichick, the last of which poured over your scouting report, which is just an honour to have that kind of guy look over your report. And after a couple of weeks, Pioli called you back and offered you a position as a pro personnel scout for the Jets. So how did it feel to receive that call and know that you'd finally achieved your dream after all of that hard work?
Yeah, I cried. I just broke down at the end of the call. It was like you guys see, like on draft day, when the player gets the call when he's surrounded by his family and friends, and hey, it's so and so. Guess what? You're coming to town. It was so emotional for me, Zeb, that it was a call I've been waiting my entire life for, and to actually get that call, and and the people that were involved are legends. When Scott Pioli called me, and he said, that night I got the call, and he said, Bill's reached a decision on you, and he meant Bill Parcells, who's in the Hall of Fame, and he said, first I got to talk to you about a couple things. Number one, it's not a high paying position. I was able to maybe get $21,000 approved for your first year. We can get you a meal card over at the university for your free meals. I can get you 2 season tickets to the Jets, and also I got to tell you, because I was newly married at the time. He said, overtime is not optional in the NFL, but it's mandatory. So if you need some time to think it over, I'm like, I don't need any time, Scott. He's like, well, hey, congratulations. You're the newest member of the New York Jets. And it was surreal. I got off the phone and I even get choked up even to this day. I mean, I got off the phone and jumped all around and cried. And first person to get a call was my grandmother, who was my biggest supporter growing up. She's the one person that really, truly believed in me, and believed that anything was possible, and believed that I could do anything. And her and I spent a lot of time together at a lot of sports bars, watching a lot of Redskins games. She drove through rain, sleet, and snow in Minnesota to get me out there to see the games off the satellite. And so I wanted to share that news with her. But it was an incredible moment.
That's amazing. Okay, so I know that, of course, it wasn't all plain sailing from there, though, because less than a month after starting as an NFL scout, you were diagnosed with testicular cancer, which thankfully you beat and resumed your duties. But obviously, I can imagine it's not without its hardships. So what kind of effect did that have on you, both professionally in your new role and mentally from a personal standpoint? Who was key to your support system during that time?
Mainly my grandma, like I said, and of course, my first wife at the time, Ruth, and of course, the Jets too were awesome, and that's something I'd like to really shed some light on, because, when I was my first month in a job, and I'd worked my entire life, wanting this dream of getting in the NFL, and I finally get it. And I started noticing something wasn't right with my health. And, young man, turn up your volume a little bit on this, because testicular cancer is something that a lot of people don't know a lot about. We all know about breast cancer and prostate cancer and all that kind of stuff, but it's the number one type of cancer young men can get between the ages of 17, I think, and 24. Well, I was right on that outside of that curve at 24, and I started noticing some swelling, some noticeable swelling in one of my testicles, and I kind of attribute it, Zeb, to the stress because I work I work full time at a bank as a loan officer, and I moonlight as a scout, and I got literally 15, 20 hours sleep a week during the last 8 months writing that book you alluded to, that I spent 3,600 hours on, that, self-published and get sent out to all the teams in the league. So I thought it was maybe just stress related. I was hoping. And so I went to the doctor's office, and, he examined me for maybe 5 minutes, and that's all it took him. He said, you have testicular cancer.
Yeah.
And, my life flashed in front of my eyes in that moment. I had always heard that people died of cancer. And so I thought it was a death sentence. I'm like, why now? Why of all times now does this have to happen to me? And it was really, how it affected me. It was, when people say, I don't know how you go through stuff like that. Well, to anybody who's gone through it, you know how you go through it. You just do it one foot, you put one foot in front of another, and you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. It's a lot of uncertainties. And yeah, was I scared? Yeah, I was scared.
Yeah.
But the thing of it was, I really want to point this out. And I haven't shared this on any other show around the world that I've done. But Scott Pioli and the New York Jets were awesome towards me. I was so scared to walk. I was in Minnesota moving my stuff back from Minnesota to New York, and that's where I went to the doctor's exam where they diagnosed me with the cancer. And I was really scared, to be honest with you, to call Scott Pioli and tell him the news because they just hired me. I wasn't even officially moved out there yet. They already went so above and beyond. I'm kind of afraid what he's going to say. And Scott said, he said, listen, Dan, he said, we're here for you. You're part of us now, and we'll do whatever we can to help you. And that's exactly what I needed to hear. Yep. And all throughout my time of, I moved to New York and after my first surgery, I had the surgery at the testicle removed back in Minnesota. And then I ended up back in New York. And it was interesting because, I always wondered, why not the Saints, to your point, Seb, right? Why the Saints, they were teed up. It looked like I was going to get hired by the New Orleans Saints. Why not the Seahawks? Why not the 49ers? Why not the Chiefs? Why the New York Jets, right? Well, the first month in the job, I got like NFL health insurance, which is the best insurance you can have. It's 100% coverage. The team doctor happened to know Dr. George Basel, who's a world-renowned surgeon at Sloan Kettering Memorial Hospital in Manhattan. He's a famous surgeon for testicular cancer, and they know each other. There's a 5-year waiting list to get in to see the surgeon, but because I'm a lot of people don't have 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm with the Jets, and this is all by the grace of God. This is nothing I did, but I'm with the Jets, so I get right in to see this doctor. And now, so I'm here, right? First month of the job, right? Or first month of the season, actually, at this point. So it's about 2 months later, excuse me. And, so I go into Dr. George Basel's office. They did like a chest x-ray and CAT scan, everything, of me on see what was going on inside me. And he starts putting up these slides, in the office, the lights in the background, the x-rays. He says, the Dr. Basel looks at me and says, my wife, Ruth, is sitting with me at the time. And he says, we got a problem. And I said, what do you mean problem? He said, yeah, your lymph nodes along your spermatic cord. There's one that goes up from down there all the way up to your sternum. And we have a lymph node the size of a dime on your spermatic cord. He said, your cancer is spreading.
Oh my goodness.
We have to operate immediately. I was like another, what are you talking about, doc? Like another 1-day surgery like I had back in Minnesota? He goes, no, he goes, this could be a lot more serious. He goes, you're probably gonna be on the table for about 8 hours and it's gonna be a 12-inch incision. And, you're probably going to miss the rest of the year. And I was like, okay, so, and he goes, we need to do this quickly. He said, I've seen that size tumor grow the size of a grapefruit in 2 weeks if left untreated.
Oh, goodness. And
so he goes, so we got to operate fast. And so I got in there and sure enough, they operated. I had 75 staples close me back up. And I vowed, Zeb, and our listeners, I said, I'm going to I've worked my entire life. This is my dream. I'm not going to sit out the season. I'm not going to opt out, right? There was no opting out of my game. I don't even have a punter on my roster if I were to build a team as a GM. So, I said, I'm going to do this. And so I made it back. They said I should miss probably about 4 to 6 months from work. I made it back in 3 weeks. And I had like wind pants on. I had a big Band-Aid going down the front of me with a t-shirt over the top. I had to hug a pillow, when I went over to like bumps in the road because it hurt so bad, but I made it back. And it was an incredible season. The Jets that year won their first title of any type, winning the AFC East title that year. And we were in a playoff game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I had a chance to take the team bus out to the Meadowlands with a police escort, the whole thing. And Jets win. We're going to the AFC title game first year, 1 game away from the Super Bowl. Confetti's coming down, from the Meadowlands. And up next, AFC championship game is flashing the scoreboard. I talk about my book, Whatever It Takes. And, all of a sudden this guy turns around me. You mentioned a few minutes ago, how I was inspired by Wayne Corbett's story, right? As far as getting in the league. There's 78,000, keep in mind, listeners, and there's 78,000 people in the Meadowlands watching this game, right? I'm sitting 50-yard line, lower deck. And this guy in front of me turns around and he says, that sure was a heck of a game, huh? And I said, yeah. I said, by the way, I said, I'm Dan Kelly. I'm a scout with the Jets. He says, I'm Wayne Corbett Sr. Nice to meet you.
Oh, amazing. Wow.
You know, so, I mean, what are the odds of that? The story that inspired me, the dad of the Jet star receiver who inspired me to do this book and get in the NFL happens to be sitting right in front of me at the stadium with 78,000 people. He's the one guy sitting in front of me. You know, so it was incredible. So, you know, it was just, and it was a mountaintop experience that day. It really was to finally reach that level. And, but yeah, it was a great challenge to get through that time. But Scott Pioli, I remember he called me in his office and he started telling me stories about how they had a secretary when he was back at the Cleveland Browns with Belichick, who went through breast cancer. And Scott said, close the door. And he said, come in here, sit down. And it still makes me choke up to this day. He just looked at me and said, you know, Dan, whatever we can do to help you, don't worry about your job. Don't worry about your assignments. Don't worry about anything. He says, let's just get you through this. Okay. I said, okay, Scott. I mean, so having Scott Pioli, you know, who's Bill Parcells' son-in-law, who's gone on to be the GM of the Kansas City Chiefs, the assistant GM of the Atlanta Falcons. He's been on the NFL, you know, Sunday night football show on NBC. You know, he's gone on to an incredible experience. I mean, an incredible career rather. But having that support of the Jets really helped me.
Yeah. Absolutely, and obviously you touched on that season there. So I want to talk about that great season the Jets had while you were part of the team. So the highlight of your pro scouting career probably was in 1998 when the Jets had an amazing season because 12-4 in the regular season, made it to the doorstep of the Super Bowl and faced off against the Broncos in the AFC Championship game. And your ability in your role meant that you thought of the idea to, and in fact accurately predicted Mike Shanahan's first 15 plays of that game, which is just crazy.
The ultimate fantasy football.
That's it. And to do that, obviously, requires watching a lot of film. So I'd like to know what exactly it is that you particularly love about watching film, sort of the X's and O's of football, and which single player that you evaluated throughout your entire career received your best ever scouting report.
Wow, you asked great questions. I just love film. I love film. I like watching football games. I can... You know, to me, I used to go into the Jets defensive line room, which each position has a position room for a meeting room for the coaches. I went into the defensive line room and I turned off the lights and I could literally sit in there and watch, you know, film with no noise in slow motion for 12 hours and it would feel like an hour. I get lost in it. I love it. It's something that's not a job. It's not a chore. It's not a responsibility. It's a love and a passion. It's something that I truly do love. And, you know, so yeah, I can grind the film. And let me tell you this, there's no shortcuts in the NFL or in football.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people say, well, how are you going to find the players? And you find the players by watching the film. And each time you watch a player, it's almost like being a private investigator because you're watching every single emotion. Why did he drop the ball? What was he? Did he lack concentration? Did he not run the right route? Did he? You know what happened? You know, so you have to ask yourself these questions when you're watching the tape. And so that's what I love about the film. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Who's your favorite or the best ever player you've ever scouted?
Whew, boy, now you're going deep on me. So that's going back about 4,000 scouting reports. Probably I got Rolodex in my mind as you say that. It's got flip through. Tim Tebow.
Yeah, fantastic.
Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
I love Tebow coming out. Matter of fact, if I were to run a team, matter of fact, when I attempted to become the general manager of the Cleveland Browns in 2017. I recommended to Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Cleveland Browns, that we bring in Tim Tebow and make him our franchise starting quarterback. I love Tim. I love everything about Tim. He's a guy that's I remember going to the Senior Bowl. I had a chance to attend the Senior Bowl the year he came out, and he had a temperature, I think, about 102. He had the flu. He stood up there with a suit and tie on in front of the media, and everything was yes, sir, no, ma'am, yes, ma'am, no, sir. You know, and it just there's a aura and a vibe that he gives off of tremendous leadership ability, and that's so critically important in the quarterback position. And so many people were critical of Tim Tebow. I had a chance to speak at Sports Management Worldwide at the NFL Scouting Combine on their expert scouting panel, and it was front of it. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Sports Management Worldwide. It's like a huge online university where people attend scouting school and stuff in the States, and we have about 400 students in the auditorium auditorium. I was up on the panel, and one person asked a question, "What do y'all think of Tim Tebow?" And I said, he will be a superstar in the National Football League. I said, he's a guy that's, I leaned on my microphone. I said, he's a guy that's, not textbook. He's a guy that's, a lot of people find a lot of fault with him and criticize a lot of things, throwing motion mechanics, this, that, the other. I said, but the guy is a natural born winner. I said, he's a homeschool kid that won a state championship in high school. He was like 34-3 at the University of Florida. I said, the guy has just got everything that I want in a quarterback. And so, of course, Josh McDaniel, ironically, Bill Belichick's protege, drafts him with the Denver Broncos. And of course, Tebow comes off the bench for Kyle Orton. I think the Broncos were 1-4. He leads them to a playoff run. I love Tebow. I love everything about him. I think he brings out the absolute best in people's potential. I think he has a way of motivating, inspiring people to be their best selves. And I think that everybody's just better for having him around. And so for me, to my money, that's the best scouting report I ever wrote. And I absolutely love Tim Tebow. And if I was named a general manager, it'd be one of my opening comments to sign him as the franchise starting quarterback of my team, even to this day.
Yeah. Great player. So, like I said earlier, obviously none other than Bill Belichick poured over your scouting report before you received your offer from the New York Jets, which is an absolute honour, given that Bill has without doubt proven himself to be one of the greatest football minds in NFL history, being an 8-time Super Bowl champion and a future Hall of Famer. And Bill, of course, served as the Jets' assistant head coach and defensive coordinator while you were a scout there. So I'd love to know, how did you find Bill Belichick behind the scenes, and which single piece of advice that he gave you was most valuable to your career, or just life in general?
Wow. What it was like working with him? He's everything you see on television. He's brilliant. I'll start by saying that. He's also much easier to get along with than a lot of people may think. Once you're in the circle inside the building, he's very cool to be around. He's very helpful. As a matter of fact, my first month on the job with New York Jets, he loaned me his vehicle to drive around and look for a place to live.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, it's like driving around Vince Lombardi's car. That's what the context is here. So it was really incredible being around him. He's always in very deep thought. He's very cerebral. He's always, my scouting mentor is Lionel Vitale, who's currently the Cowboys college scouting director. Lionel's taught me. Lionel's won 3 Super Bowls with the Patriots. And, he told me, whereas some coaches in the NFL may have plan A, B, and C, Belichick's a guy that has plan A, B, C, D, E, F, and G.
Yeah.
He's always 1 step ahead, or 2 steps, or 3 steps to everybody else in the NFL. He pays super close attention to every detail. And that's kind of the way I do scouting. I pay attention to every motion. Nothing's wasted. Belichick, I read an article last year. It was fascinating. He walked, I think it was one of the most telling interviews ever, or columns or articles about him, rather, that he walked outside and he gauges the wind speed before a football game. And he told his corner, he said, listen, he goes, the wind is blowing tonight from the southeast about 17 miles an hour. I think you should probably play about 2.5 yards further off the ball. And he did that. And the cornerback he was talking to got 2 interceptions that night because of Bill's advice. So I mean, just stuff that I would never think of.
Yeah.
But that's what he is. He never gave me any direct advice. He was always super supportive, super encouraging, super nice to me. Have you ever seen the movie Forrest Gump?
Yes, yeah, cool.
Yeah, my favorite movie of all time. I always like to joke with people that, right before he went in and resigned as the New York Jets head coach to take the New England Patriots job, he and I passed each other in the hallway right before he walked in the room. And we had an exchange, he said, hi, Dan. I said, hi, coach. And he said, and he looked at me and walked into the room literally about 5 steps later and resigned as the head coach of the New York Jets. And after he got it. And so I always like to say in my Forrest Gump voice, that nice young coach passed right past me in the hallway before he turned down the job and went to New England. So it was crazy. It was really crazy. He's extremely cerebral. He's extremely eccentric. He's extremely himself. He's extremely in deep thought all the time. I've heard from somebody I know that knows him that his best friend in the world is John Bon Jovi. He likes to travel and do stuff, and he's just a really cool guy to be around, and I think that's why the players really respond to him so well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Dan, I want to end with some quick fire questions. You ready?
I'm ready. Sounds like I'm going to a game show. Do I get a lifeline?
It's been easy, don't worry. Okay, so favorite takeout food?
Chinese.
Chinese, nice. Dogs or cats?
Dogs. I like to have a mop dog. You ever seen those?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to name a mop. So I tell my kids, I said, listen, I said, let's get a mop dog. Like, please, Daddy, don't do that. I'm like, yeah, I want a mop. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Brilliant. Okay, Twitter or Instagram?
Twitter.
Favorite music artist?
Of all time? That's a tougher one. Of all time, I would say probably Billy Idol.
Nice choice. Favorite sports movie?
Jerry Maguire.
Nice. Funniest guy in the Jets facility when you were there?
Funniest guy in the Jets. There was no humor in the Jets. That's the problem. It was all business all the time. I would say funniest guy in the Jets building. That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that before. I would say Charlie Weiss, by far our offensive coordinator, who went on to become the head coach of Notre Dame. It was funny. He was loud and he was very boisterous. And it was funny because I'd get in the office in the morning, right? And of course, there was no doors. There was a door, but there's no doors. There was no windows and no clock in my room where I work. So you lose track of time easily. And so I would leave probably about 10:30 at night. I mean, I work probably 70, 80, 90 hours a week, right? So check this out. So I'm walking down the hallway very gingerly, right? I'm walking out the hall. And all of a sudden, Charlie Weiss, our offensive coordinator, can hear somebody walking down the hallway, and he knows it's me because we're the only two still in the building, right? And he just yells out his office. He goes, Dan, he goes, don't you want to win? See, you're laughing. That's funny. Yeah, that's he was the funniest one. I think he had a lot of cool things to say, and people, they laughed at a lot of the stuff he said and stuff. So yeah,
nice.
Charlie Weiss.
Okay, favorite NFL player of all time?
John Riggins.
Yeah, straight up. Most intelligent football mind you've ever met?
That's tough. That's really tough. There's a handful of them. I've been blessed and privileged to be around Joe Gibbs.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, and I'll preface that by saying he was the only coach in NFL history who won 3 different Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks. Yeah. Bobby Beathard, the architect of the Washington Redskins dynasty, built the entire Redskins dynasty with only using, I think it was 2 first-round draft picks. All the rest of the guys were low-round picks and free agents. He found Joe Gibbs. Nobody even knew who Joe Gibbs was when he brought him to the owner's attention. Jack Kent Cooke, the old owner of the Redskins, Bobby Beathard walked into the owner's office and said, I got a coach for you. And he says, Joe Gibbs. And the owner says, Joe, who? So that qualifies where you can find Hall of Famers, right? And put together Super Bowl champions that nobody knows anything about. Tony Dungy.
Yeah.
Mark Trestman. Mark Trestman is absolutely brilliant. He could be the smartest of the group. It's if I had to put money on it. Mark Trestman is the only coach in the history of football to coach 2 different MVPs in 2 different leagues. With Rich Gannon, the MVP of the Raiders in the NFL, and Anthony Crivello up in the CFL with the Montreal Alouettes. Mark is extremely brilliant. A man of very few words, a man who has a great heart, a lot of compassion, is even a better man than he is a coach. But he's an incredible guy. I would say, Bill Belichick, obviously, Bill Parcells. I've been around Andy Reid. He would be in that conversation. So it's Bruce Allen this last year when I had a chance to interview for the Washington Redskins job, he would be in that conversation too. So it's hard to narrow it down. And all these men I'm mentioning to you, I've had a chance to be around and to work with. And as far as coaches are concerned and GMs, the smartest man outside of that I've ever known that's not a GM yet is my mentor, Lionel Vitale. Who's the Cowboys scouting director. He's a man with 4 rings himself, a man who was trained and mentored by Bill Belichick and Ozzie Newsome, who are 2 of the greatest minds to ever live. He talks weekly to Jerry and Stephen Jones. He's drafted a plethora of great players throughout the years, including Ray Lewis. So I've been blessed, and he's my mentor. I've spent thousands of hours on the phone with him over the last 20 years. So when you talk, Chris Shea is another one who I trained in at the Jets, who's the Kansas City Chiefs pro scouting director right now. Chris is brilliant. He's got a law degree. He helped me put together some things. Chris is another one. So and that's the thing. It's really hard to select. I've been blessed and privileged to be around some of the greatest minds in NFL history.
Absolutely. Okay, so if we have a season, and fingers crossed we do, what will Washington's record be for the 2020 NFL season?
Fingers crossed. 5-11.
Yeah, that's quite a realistic choice. A lot of people are homers and just go at least 500, but no, that's an honest choice. So I like that pick.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Dwayne Haskins at all. Okay. And so I think that's really going to hinder them. Ron Rivera took the job knowing that Haskins had to be his quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
And of course, I know that Washington have won 3 titles in the Super Bowl era that you alluded to, but it's been nearly 30 years since the last one. So I want to know, would you give up a pinky finger if it meant that Washington won Super Bowl 55?
hey, Zeb, come on, Zeb, come on. People say to me, they said, I don't know if this is a family show, but people say all the time, right? They say to me, I would give up my left nut to get the NFL. I said, boy, do I got a story for you. I did. So now you're asking me if I would go Ronnie Lott, right? Ronnie Lott, who cut off part of his pinky so he could play the second half of the game, right? And I think it was a playoff game against Chicago. No, I wouldn't cut off my pinky. No, I wouldn't go that far. But I would love to see it happen. It has been 30 years. Now you're making me feel old because I went to that Super Bowl. I was at that Super Bowl my senior year in high school. My grandma got me a graduation present to go to Super Bowl January 26, 1992 at the Metrodome. And Redskins won 37-24. So it's been a while. It really has. 30 years. Oh, that's wow. That went fast. But I would love to see it happen, and I would love to be the one to do it.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the beauty of the NFL. Every team's time will come at some point, so we shall see. Dan, thank you so much for your time. I've had an absolute blast talking to you. Where can people find you across social media, and also check out your book as well?
Absolutely, Zeb. You can find me on Twitter at Daniel Kelly Book. Please come and friend me and follow me over there or whatever you call it. I'd love to have you aboard. It's love to see your stuff that you post and vice versa. I'm on Facebook, of course, and also you can find my book in 11 different countries. Anywhere books are sold online, it's available on Amazon, I think, in just about every country around the world. Barnes & Noble, and my book website, if you want to check it out or hear a little bit more about my story, you can go to whateverittakesbook.com. And but before I can't let me go before I ask you the same questions. Would you cut off your pinky to see Jacksonville win Super Bowl 55?
If it meant Gardner Minshew was behind center, then absolutely.
That's awesome.
From the pain of 2017, I'm glad to say, yeah, I'd happily walk around with 9 fingers the rest of my life if it meant we got that Lombardi. So
that's awesome. I admire that. That's awesome. Matter of fact, you're gonna go viral. Make sure you do a show like that. Actually, you should probably get recorded. You don't have to show the actual finger getting cut off, but it'd be like, guy who runs sports show cuts off finger, Jacksonville wins Super Bowl. It'll be viral across the world. You'll be famous everywhere. It'll be incredible. So then you can hold up your hand and you'll just have this like little stub and you'll be like, hey, look, we won the Super Bowl.
I'll jot it down. I'll jot it down for the future.
Absolutely. That's better than a tattoo any day of the week.
Dan, once again, thank you so much and have a great day.
Hey, you too, Zab. Thank you so much for having me on. And take care.
And there he was, the lifelong NFL fan that made it as a scout at the highest level of professional football. Absolute inspiration, Daniel Kelly. What an amazing story that I was glad to find out more about and share with you all. I've got many more great guests coming very soon, so stay tuned right here on Seb Talk Sports. And to take us out as usual, here's another brilliant track by All-Pro New York Giants running back, turned music creator and friend of the show, David Wilson. Catch you soon, guys.